Hey guys, we're back with another episode of Viberate webinar series. We'll be digging into the wonderful world of data driven music business, specifically music audiences, how to engage them, and what it really means to have a strategy in place. If you're an artist manager, a music marketing agency, or label, well, this one is for you. If this is a first Vibrate webinar for you guys, welcome aboard. With us today, David Boyle, a seasoned expert in breaking down trends for the electronic music industry as part of IMS Business Report. He's also a founder at Audience Strategies, putting data to work on a daily basis. Also joining us, David Halb, an MTV awarded drummer and a serial entrepreneur who combines his passion for music and business as head of business development here at Viberate. Remember, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Go ahead, write your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll take time at the end to answer those. For any quick info during the webinar, please turn to our two panelists in the chat window. So, David, happy to have you with us.
Yeah, hi everyone.
So now, David, we'll call you Studio David. Okay.
Great, fine with that.
Let's kick things off with you. If we want to talk about engagement, we need to find a way to measure it, of course. Compare it between, let's say, different promotional approaches and so on. Tell us, how do you and Viberate tie into this discussion?
Well, Viberate is a data service on top of almost everything that's kind of happening in music. And I'm not saying just only recorded music, but we're also putting a lot of effort into covering the live music aspects, festivals and so on. And in that sense, Viberate gives all the market participants a chance to understand their performance in the market better than ever before. And this is actually creating a massive advantage when thinking about managing careers, whether your own, your signed artists, and it even delivers never experienced before talent discovery capabilities. I mean, it's not like we're the only company doing that, but what people probably want to know is that we strongly believe that we have a unique approach to organizing the music data that we can get our hands on, and this basically makes it possible for us to deliver the most accurate and most user-friendly music analytics out there.
Right. Okay, but David, being an artist yourself, comparing your beginnings with what artists can work with today, what they have access to, how do you see all this?
I mean, based on my personal background, which is a funny mixture of everything, I can strongly relate to the idea that, artists don't really want or don't even need to measure everything they or we do. But like thinking back, there's always this curiosity element, which usually wins. And basically you want to know, like, what's happening with the stuff you're putting out.
Right.
Basically you want to understand. I mean, thinking back, I can only remember moments when we were counting likes, reading comments, checking if we have new listeners on streaming services and stuff like that. I mean, it's basically guerrilla stuff, but it's somehow programmed into you. But anyway, like once you adopt a more long-term focus and you actually want to build a career and a business with what you're doing, then measuring stuff becomes increasingly more important. So basically then you, like, the one thing that you really want to do is learn and observe, like, the audience, the market, so that you can become some sort of a chameleon and adapt to whatever is happening on the market, because you usually can get a lot of signals from it.
Taking it over to David online. Let's call you online, David, at least today. So when artists get excited about the concept of audience strategy, they first Google search on the topic. Will probably bombard them with articles about consumer journey, how to define their pains, wants, and needs and stuff. But today we're discussing audience strategy in the music world. So what are the basics here, and where do they overlap with Google's top search results on the topic, if at all?
That's a good question. I mean, I would say the principles are exactly the same, which is Well, how I would define it is starting with the audience. And if you can be really, really clear who your audience is, then that makes everything you do a lot easier, more focused, and hopefully a lot more impactful. So on the face of it, it's exactly the same lessons, whether you're a consumer brand, luxury goods company, a TV show, or a music artist. Now, practically how you do that is a little bit different in each case. I guess I'd have one piece of advice to start with, which is when you think about your audience, like, don't just think about them as one big lump. Think about them in like at least 3 different groups. Like, who's my audience right now? Who's really excited about me? Who are my fans? Who's already engaged? Maybe there's some more of them. Maybe you can do things differently to better serve them, but that's your now audience. Also think about who's next, like who's on the edge. They're not necessarily fans yet. Maybe they kind of like your music. Maybe they like another artist that's similar to you, but not you yet. That's your next audience, and go do things that really excite them and that engage them and bring them on board. And then crucially, like, who's your not yet audience, or maybe even your never audience, like other audiences. I'm not going to waste time doing what they want, doing the brand partnerships that would work for them, creating music that would work for them. That's not me. Focus. So who's your now and who's your next? And that laser focus can really help you do everything differently.
That is a great piece of advice, online, David. I know you're very passionate about the concept of combining analytics and creativity. Can you give us a quick intro into this symbiosis for those who are watching and are new to the concept of data in the music industry?
Yeah, that's another good question. I think there's a mistake that particularly analysts, researchers, data nerds, and sometimes label people make. Artists don't make it that much, but sometimes. That mistake is following the data. If you just look at what the trends are and just look at what the data says, and you do the things that score well and you don't do the things that score poorly, you're just following the crowd, right? That's kind of dumb, kind of lazy, and kind of unimaginative. That happens all the time, by the way. Stop it. Also, though, I would argue if you purely put art out into the world that you think is beautiful with complete disregard for the market, for what audiences want, need, how they behave, where they consume it, I think that's beautiful. If you can make a living out of that, you should go ahead. But you're much more likely to make a living if you also take into account what audiences want, all right? So it's some combination of art that you're excited about and believe in, but also trends and audiences that you're excited to engage with. How do you balance them? And I think that's where it takes real brilliance. It takes brilliance to be firm about your creative vision, to know what it is, and to stand up for it in meetings with labels and distributors and other people. And it takes brilliance to have good data, which is now at your fingertips, but to have good data so that you can be challenged, inspired, and kind of balance those two things together. And when you see great artists, they're often doing that. Like, I like to talk about David Guetta, who I was lucky to work with.
Right.
And I remember, I was relatively young and naive during one meeting in Paris many moons ago. And I showed him a graph of which genres were very popular and which weren't. And I was quite dismissive of one of the genres in particular that was not very popular. And he had this smile on his face. And I said, why are you smiling? And he said, I'm going to bring that back. So he'd seen a trend that was going against the market, and any unimaginative creative person or label exec might have said, "Hey, stay away from that. That's poisonous." And he said, "No, I'm going to go against that trend. I'm going to win. I'm going to change perceptions in the market." And that's what a brilliant creative does: balancing creativity and data.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's dive into more specific scenarios. David, what are some simple warm-up steps artists need to take, and how can they leverage data to help them out?
Okay. I'm going to quickly reference what David Boyle just said, basically combining all the data. But anyway, so like first steps, when I'm assuming that my work won't really resonate with everyone the same way, that's the first sort of fact that we have to mention. Basically, it's good to have some strategies to find out where and who it probably could resonate with, So, and here I can think of stuff like geographies, like genre, channels where there might be a crowd for my work and
Right.
where future consumers could be hanging out and so on. And a quick example could be like, to start, we could do a top level genre comparison to investigate the most suitable channels or like geographies to engage the audience with. So I hope you see my screen share here. So like I'm comparing the techno and dance genre, and at the first glance, is there any significance in terms of geography? So what I can see here is basically, I can see that techno has a wider crowd in Germany and the dance genre has a wider crowd in the US. So what David mentioned before, now I could pack this into different creative approaches. I could go against the trend, or let's say just to have a very, very simple start, I could think about a takeaway. Okay, if I'm a techno artist, maybe I should focus on German markets, setting up online campaigns, or vice versa. If I'm doing a promo for dance, I should maybe focus on US markets. And moving ahead with my research, focusing on channels, I could look at the past 12 months and again, comparing techno and dance, I can see that Instagram has been in favor of both of these genres. But then if I investigate further, I can see that, for example, looking at the dance genre, TikTok has actually been amazing to address the audience in this genre. So again, another takeaway here could be, okay, if I'm setting up a promo, maybe launching either my career or new single strictly on TikTok and basically leveraging this channel to build and growing the audience. Whereas if I'm doing a techno promo, I could maybe focus on Instagram and build out from there. So, with this type of information, I can start brainstorming. These are soft examples, but basically, as David Boyle mentioned perfectly, use your creativity to work on that type of data.
Dive deeper.
So basically, then if I'm moving forward with additional examples, let's say, because we are not only speaking about artists, but also what other market participants can do. Let's say, for instance, talent buyers.
Right.
For instance, I put up an example here with Electric Daisy Carnival in Las Vegas, which is one of the largest electronic music festivals. An interesting thing is, like, promoters usually want to book artists with engaged audiences, which means that basically they will their mindset will be booking artists that can positively impact ticket sales, in a sense. And if I'm looking at the festival's 2018 lineup, I can see that they actually booked like close to 250 artists, and I'm sure David Boyle will also have a take on this. So the debatable thing is, you don't really need a software or a lot of data to set up the headliner lineup. You can always go the traditional, more lazy way, and basically go with bidding on big names. But then you still have to book like over 200 supporting acts, and having help and a tool that can basically help you here is more than welcome.
Absolutely, yeah.
So here's a demonstration of a strategy that I would use to set up a strategy for discovering artists for this for the support lineup. Having in mind ticket sales and the overall festival audience demography. Now, okay, for instance, I'm setting up a search here in the electronic genre with additional filtering on subgenre, techno, dance, and so on. And let's say I discovered an artist called Louis the Child here. First, let me check if there is any discrepancy on the overall audience. So basically, we can see that there is a general fit in this sense. But now, what I'm focusing on next is basically the audience and engagement stats, information about this artist. And what I can discover here is I see that the fan base size is somehow established,
Mm-hmm.
But the more important thing here is I can see that the audience is engaging actively with this artist, So that means that there is a very active crowd following the artist and so on. And now what I can do next, I can focus on Spotify and ask myself, okay, if my festival, if the city of my festival is Las Vegas, let me check what this artist actually uh, has, like how many listeners on Spotify this
Mm-hmm.
artist has here. And I can see there's roughly 40,000 monthly active listeners, And again, what a next step that I can do is maybe check neighboring cities, like closest to my
Right.
festival. So Los Angeles could be a good fit. Okay, again, I can see almost 170,000 monthly active listeners. So
These are
what I
numbers.
what I did with that, I found out, like I found a few de-risking factors that can positively impact ticket sales if I'm kind of considering this artist for my
The
lineup.
lineup, yeah.
Yeah, and now if I want to dive even deeper, let's say I'm closer to my final decision and I can decide between two artists, I can always do a comparison. And this is also a great feature if I want to use it for convincing other members or other stakeholders in this decision-making process. I can basically compare artists side by side, dive deeper into some specifics, or fan base distribution, or check out what are the main differences in some channels and stuff like that. And basically, this offers me a lot of information that I can use to make decisions.
Wonderful. Before you put your label hat
Mhm.
on, I'd like to talk to the other David. David, we've just switched from a micro to a macro setting. In what way can a data-driven approach be adopted when looking at trends that influence the entire industry?
Oh, I think it applies just as well to industry trends as it does to individual artists or tracks. So I'm in the middle of writing this report you mentioned earlier for the International Music Summit on what's happening in dance music, what are the trends, what are the issues, what's working, what's not. So I've been out over the last 3 months or so. I've interviewed more than 30 people from across the industry. So label heads, promoters, agents, artists, everybody. And I would say probably a third of what they told me was a trend actually turned out to be exactly a trend in the way they described it when I went to look at the data. I would say about a third of the trends they told me were actually substantially different than what they told me when I looked at the data. Not that they were wrong, it's just that it wasn't quite what they thought in the countries they thought, as big as they thought. It was materially different than what I was told.
Hmm?
And I'd say, honestly, about a third of the things I've been told were just not true, or not true in the sense in which I was looking at them. So, hey, dance music's growing in this country. You look at the data, it's actually not. Okay, there might be some subset of the industry that's growing, but in a macro level, it's not. So I really think, yeah, a third of the time it's fine. Your big trends are what you read about in the press. That's okay. A third of the time, what you read about in the press is not really what's quite happening. And you should dig into it to validate it, sense check it, and then understand where and how. And a third of the time, I would say these big trends are lovely stories that might be true in a sense, but really just aren't actually the headline that you should be being told. So yeah, it definitely applies to big trends as well.
Mhm.
Can I
Well,
say a couple of things about David's wonderful examples
go
there as
ahead,
well?
please do.
Because they were really, really good. And a couple of those things I
Spot
was
on.
doing earlier before this webinar. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's how I should be doing it. Yeah, I would say it definitely applies to headline talent as much as it does to talent at the lower end of the lineups. I mean, agents or promoters might tell you that they have a good sense of all the artists that could headline, but these things move all the time. There's hundreds, maybe thousands of artists to choose from. Every festival or every event has different geographies that they care about, different audience goals. And depending who you've already booked, how you need to fill up the lineup to complement your audience and grow your audience maximally, that's really hard. I honestly don't think anybody can do that in their head. In fact, it'd be really fun to find someone who thinks they could, and then to do like a blind test of them or quiz them on it versus somebody on Viberate to work out like marks out of 10 on knowledge on this stuff. So I think it's needed at the top as well as the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And I would add another really important use case, which is if we're trying to give opportunities to people who have not had opportunities or who've had barriers put in front of them, women, people of color, then it's all the more important to go beyond artists we already know and have grown up listening to and find artists who are different from us, different from the people who work at our companies, different from the rest of the people who are booking. And so if you're pushing outside of your comfort zone to find new artists and bring new opportunities to people who haven't had them, then that's all the more reason you need to be using tools to help you to do that, partly so that you can find great artists who are bubbling up but not being talked about, and partly so that you can not just ask the same old artists again and again to represent women or represent Black people on your lineups. Right. So use data and use it for good, as well as booking, the headliners. Be creative with it. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I guess that's my last thought, if I can, then.
Go ahead.
In what David did, you saw a lot of creativity. Like, this stuff is never black and white. There's never one data point or one platform that you care about. There's multiple data sets, multiple graphs. That's a creative act in and of itself. Who do you pick as a benchmark? What countries do you compare? Which graphs are important? What platforms do you look at? You saw a lot of creativity in what David did just then. And so just as it's important to master your craft as an artist, it's important to master this as another instrument that you play to find the right notes, to find the right data points, and to pull out the right trends from it.
Well, there are lots of Mozarts of data here at Viberate. Well, you've given examples of how data can be applied to an artist's career. You've given great examples of from A&R, talent buyer, and so on. But please put your label hat on. How to get valuable data if I'm in the A&R role now.
Yeah, sure. Just one remark to what
ahead.
David said.
Yeah.
The amazing thing here is this type of information was sort of a privilege to only a small group of people or executives in the music industry, not even that long ago, So we would probably warmly encourage people to basically think how to apply their creativity not only to crafting music, but actually also how to build their brand, place themselves where, and so on. So because this is also a very essential part of audience building, career building, and business building. I'm sure you agree, David, also on that. Yeah. Okay. So another example. Let's go for it.
Please.
Cool. So let's say I wanna sign a new artist on my label. Again, I like to use filters. So every time we're somehow trying to investigate new artists and fresh ideas and so on, what we want to do first, we want to boil things down to a more manageable shortlist.
Right.
And what I did here, I prepared a shortlist of roughly 50 artists. What I was using is the electronic main genre, like parent genre, and then I moved into techno. Just for a little context, I'm doing this because we have there is a Viberate related label connected through our co-founder DJ Umek, who is also one of the most prominent techno DJs in the world. And let's say I want to sign a new artist for that particular label. That's I'm just giving a context for why techno. Okay, so one thing that I want to do here is I want to exclude all the artists that are ranked above like the 15,000 position. So basically, I'm looking at artists who are ranked below that because it's a relatively underground genre.
Right.
And what I want to do is I want to check or I want to investigate artists that have at least 300,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. And now let's say that I have my eyes on a particular artist called Marie here. Now, what I want to do, I want to investigate her audience stats. The first thing that I can see is that her overall career chart basically looks like it's up only, you know. So this is a great de-risking signal for me again. Now, the next thing that I can look at is the engagement, you know. So I see that the size of her fan base is also relatively established, but look at the engagement curve. I mean, it's like exponential, you know.
Right.
So this is again an additional de-risking signal for me. Now let's quickly jump to her Spotify stats. If I'm looking at this here, so at the section where I can see the average industry monthly listeners, what I can discover here is that the artist outperforms the average artist in this rank like by, what is it, like 30-fold, you know. And this is also again another amazing signal
He's
for
on
me.
fire.
So what this actually here means is that the average artist in this rank has roughly 11,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, and the artist that I'm actually checking out has over 300,000 monthly listeners. So again, great example. Now, because we are talking about techno and electronic genre, let's quickly jump to Beatport stats. I'm just displaying this because while I was preparing for this webinar, I found this example, and which is actually amazing, very, very rare. But let's look at it. So let's look at tracks, the section tracks over time here. So if we're looking at the timeline from 2019 up until now, look at what happens here. So all the tracks released by this artist versus the tracks that entered the charts. So the number of all the tracks released is sharply decreasing, while the tracks that entered the charts is increasing steadily. And look at what this actually means. So the conclusion is, if I'm sort of having a return on investment mindset here, because I'm the A&R and the label.
Right.
Okay, so in 3 years, the artist, what she achieved is almost every track she released is entering the charts, you know. And so basically what this tells me is the artist obviously has some recipe or intelligence or creative mindset to be able to address the market in a way which is actually amazing, you know. And now back to like if what the examples that I mentioned before and this now. So this gives us a lot of information also for artists, you know. We can see like where to find the engagement, what to be like, what to look out for, which are the key and essential pieces of information that they can use. You know, they can use Viberate to screenshot specific sections of the platform to not only like reflect on what they're doing, but also to pitch themselves either to festivals, to labels. You know, they can if the artist has a great understanding of the festival's audience, you know, they can basically without any hassle or effort pitch themselves because they have actually data to prove that they are a good fit, you know, either for the label roster or the lineup of a specific festival. Yeah. So yeah, I would warmly suggest that people start using this and in many creative ways.
If you don't find that amazing, you're dead. So, David, online David, you also work with both artist teams and labels. How did the process vary talking to different entities within the industry?
Okay, yeah. How did the process vary? And I think that's a different question than how should the process vary, which I'm going to talk about as well. How did the process vary? Well, yeah, okay. So labels wanted to have quite thoughtful conversations to really explore, like, where are the options to grow audiences? What should we do differently? They wanted to do planning and thinking and ideation and like be quite creative about it. So do a lot of the things that we saw other David do earlier on the platform, like live and workshop. What they generally wanted to do then was give artists the answer in a really short period of time, like really quickly, not to bother the artist with the data. And I think that's completely wrong. And it's changing nowadays. Some labels I work with, you know, want to do this process with the artist, like want to engage the artist in this process. So it's not true at all that artists just want the conclusions. Artists want to be engaged. And actually, David Guetta is a good example. If we go back to that meeting I mentioned earlier in Paris, it was 3 hours long. completely driven by me and loads of graphs. Like that was it. And so David moved around the table, elbowed me out the way to get closer to the computer, kept stealing pieces of paper to like write more notes, write more notes, write more notes. He was way more engaged than any of the label team were. So don't treat artists as though they just need the answers and a high-level conclusion. No, they want to be involved in the process. They want to think and understand this. And then it shapes things that they do every day. So yeah, there should be no difference between the two, but sometimes there are.
Guys, we've covered a lot just now, a lot of great examples. If both of you would like to leave the viewers with a final thought, David, online David.
I think at the end of this, there are so many ways you can use it, so many charts that we looked at, so many things you can use it to be helpful for. It's easy to be confused. So at the end of the day, before you close it down and move on, just keep one thing in your head, like one insight, like one type of audience, one country that really excited you, one set of playlists that you thought were a real opportunity compared to other artists who managed to get on them and you haven't. It doesn't really matter. Just find one thing and then go after it, make it happen, and then find another, and then another, and then another. So yeah, keep it simple and walk away with one big insight and then go make it happen.
Great. David?
Yeah, I completely agree with what David said. So basically keep your goals manageable and somewhat achievable. I mean, they definitely have to be exciting and sort of, they have to drive you, but you have to have them in line to keep your mind sharp. And so besides that, I would also like to mention, because we're a week away from the IMS conference. So me and my colleagues from the team from Viberate will be there. There's going to be a bunch of us. So if there's if these topics that we covered in this webinar are at least somewhat exciting to you and you want to talk more about them, please find us. Come talk to us. And besides that, Viberate, so the platform that I was using and the team that I'm part of, also offers a 7-day free trial so that you can basically get a taste of what this data actually looks like in action. So yeah, warmly welcome to try it out and give it a shot.
So guys, you've heard it here first. Both of these guys will be attending the IMS conference next week. David Boyle will be presenting the annual IMS business report that provides a vital and, of course, telling insight into how the electronic music industry has been doing this year. And David Halb right here will be attending on behalf of Viberate, IMS's official data partner. If you're on the island, I mean, make sure to catch them both. All right. Let's have a look at the Q&A section. So Ezekiel Gomez asks, David, David Boyle, hip hop, electronic music, and rap has been the most common styles of music in NFT and metaverse space. Do you guys think there is space for rock and heavy metal music in this space? Love to hear you. David, what do you think?
Oh, good God, yes. There's absolutely room for everybody in this space. Yeah, like so many technologies, it was pioneered by the electronic music world. No surprise, the clue's in the name, electronic music. We're good at that stuff. But yeah, you're right. Hip hop followed soon afterwards, and there were some epic deals. That's just the start. We're at the earliest stages of working out what NFTs are. So I would say yes, absolutely. And if you want some good advice on how to think about NFTs and your NFT strategy, you should definitely read the IMS business report out next week on Wednesday, which will have some sections and discussion on that topic.
Teasing.
Yeah. So I'm sure Ezekiel is happy with the answer. Now, James asks, what if I don't have a large enough audience yet? How can I use this data? David, what do you think?
Great question. Easy answer. So, I mean, the beauty of data is that, of course, it's the best things. The best thing is always to reflect on your work, because it's personal. You get emotionally driven. But if you don't have an audience yet, there's a great way to learn and study approaches of like peer artists, who have who already have an established fan base or an audience. So basically, even if the audience is not yours, but you know that you're somehow connected, you're trying to address the same type of audience. The easiest way, basically, investigate this or that, and basically learn from it. Try to find inspiration in the audience of other artists, and again, use creativity to pull data and make it work for you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Rebecca Victor asks, is a data-driven approach best suited for artists with representation or independent artists? What do you think, David Boyle?
Oh, I mean, I think every artist should understand their audience. Every artist should understand the audience that they want next after this audience, like who's next. So I don't think it matters whether you got representation or not. In fact, it might help you more if you don't have representation, because you need all the ammunition you can get to represent yourself. So no. Every artist should be all over this. Absolutely, big or small.
You agree, David?
Definitely, because I mean, again, it's not like we're not speaking about data as if it were, like reserved or specifically or exclusively reserved for only like this part of this part of people. But basically, the more you understand the data, the more you can reflect on it, the more ideas you get, the more of a chameleon you become, and being a chameleon in music and in art in general is basically the thing that's going to drive your business. Yeah.
So highly informed artist is not a bad artist at all.
Definitely.
So Demetrius Jurina asks, as I consider myself being part of the next generation in the business, what do you think is next in the business after streaming? Is it metaverse? Is it membership platform like Patreon? David, what do you think, David Boyle?
Well, I have to plug my report, which on Wednesday will answer this question. But you mentioned membership platforms. I think that's really interesting as well. If you have an audience of any size, I would absolutely urge you to build a community around them, something like a Discord server. Other options are available. So yeah, talking to your core audience, understanding them more, giving them things they're excited about and interested in, I think that should be a key part of your strategy. And we'll publish a database of all the electronic music Discord servers we can find next Wednesday. But yeah, metaverse, I don't think you've got a choice other than you have to be in a metaverse. It's where young people spend their time. It's where they discover culture and interact with artists and find artists. So if you're not there, you're just not relevant to a generation. You've got no choice but to be there. So yeah, metaverse community is definitely part of it. I would say NFTs can probably wait, unless that's a passion of yours and your audience is all about it. Give that another year or two, maybe. But, there's so many different ways. So hear about all of them on Wednesday and pick the ones that work for you.
Wednesday is the day. Amanda asks, I'm an independent artist. Any tips for leveraging data for single releases to have the most successful launch? And follow-up question, how about using data to continue buzz around the release a couple of weeks after launch? What do you think, David?
We'll have lunch after.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a great question, actually. So, one simple way of looking at this would be, like, any tips for leveraging data. I would look at using Viberate. I would look at my stats, seeing which of all the channels available is the strongest one. Like, where do I have the largest following? Use that one to like boost all the other channels, and cross promote, from Instagram, asking followers to go to my Spotify or Twitter account. Actually, whatever combination works for you. But the thing is that you should leverage your most active channel to do that. Try to understand it, and then the follow-up question is how about using data to continue buzz?
Exactly.
Promotion never happens immediately. I mean, yes, in some cases, but it usually has a phase of execution, and then it has a phase of impact. So what you want to do, give it a little time, see where the results are where you can observe the best results, and then you could follow up. If, let's say, if so far your strongest channel was Instagram, and you discovered that, oh, along the way, along the way doing the promo, my TikTok has activated like in insane amounts or even in satisfactory amounts, switch or turn the strategy around, improvise, use creativity again, and but basically it's a little it's very similar to promoting books. You shouldn't stop. When the book is released, then you have to like do your best work for a year to promote the hell out of everything you got.
Right. Online David, do you have any advice for Amanda for her single release all the way up to follow up and make some buzz and noise?
Yeah, just a couple of suggestions. The first thing, which is not data related, but is to get your story right. So many new artists share great music, that's awesome, but they don't have a compelling artist story, and so they're easily forgettable to somebody who just discovers them for the first time. So get your story something that's really polished and really compelling, and push it out everywhere. But then the data side of it, I think, is pitching to playlists, pitching to radio, even if it's small community radio, pitching to influencers or gatekeepers in magazines that are going to write about you online or otherwise. That's where a small number of facts that get somebody to open an email or get somebody to read the rest of the email can be really helpful. So just find killer facts and use them to reach out to people.
Okay, now, David, there's another question for you. Philip Kaspar asks, so TikTok has been mentioned. You mentioned TikTok as a good new platform for artist discovery, but how do you make sure your video stands out? Are there specific general rules you can follow to increase the visibility for a new single release?
Is that for me?
That's for you, yes.
I don't know is the answer, because TikTok is so personal. And so my TikTok is heavy industrial machinery in China, like crushing rocks and doing all sorts of exciting things. I have no idea what the kids are watching. So no, find someone way younger than me and ask them that question. Okay,
I'll try with another David. You have any specific advice for TikTok?
I don't think there's any specific recipe, but basically, it's more of a question of current narratives. Like. It's similar to NFTs. There's like a 3-month period where something specific is popular, then another trend pops up, and basically you usually have to somehow ride a wave or hop on a train of the current narrative and basically try to work that angle. So I think that's the recipe.
Yeah. Wear an eye patch. That always helps. Yeah. Anyway, Fabio Kinle asks, don't you think that if everyone is only talking data-driven decisions, the music industry and also the possibility of new genres or styles will be changed heavily? Well, that's a great question. David Boyle, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the key is in the wording of the question. So data-driven decision-making is something I don't like. Think about that David Guetta example. That would be like, hey, this genre is not working, therefore don't do it. That would be data-driven. What David made was a data-informed decision, which is, hey, that genre is not popular, but I can think of a way to make it popular, so I'm going to do it anyway. So yeah, data-informed, like you have to know how that genre is performing. Otherwise, you're walking into a trap potentially. But data-informed, not data-driven. Like, don't do what the data tells you. Do something that's informed by the data and combined with your creativity. So yeah, it is dangerous. And some people are doing that in the industry. They won't look at an artist without a certain number of stats. They won't do a marketing campaign unless it's one of the hot trends. That's dumb. Know that and then be creative and do something that's authentic.
So do you, David?
Completely agree. I mean, it's, data shouldn't be fear-inducing, but should be somehow relieving you away from this and basically give you inspiration for new ideas. So not being scared of, the scenarios that currently don't work, because that never means that they won't start working again or anything like that.
Right. So data-driven against data. You said informed, David, right? Wonderful. Okay, guys. So let's put these pieces of information together. Everything we spoke of can be used as a strong leverage for artists when pitching labels or festivals and so on. So simply screenshot this and share with whoever you have to convince, and of course use the data that is supporting your case. Set up a few simple goals, pick a few metrics that you believe you can grow over time, pick your main channel to grow on, screenshot data points and use them as leverage to pitch labels and festivals, and of course rinse and repeat. So, great questions from the audience, but I think it's time to wrap it up. I'd like to thank everyone that tuned in. If you're in Ibiza, make sure to catch our lovely Davids at the IMS conference. David Boyle, do you know if David Guetta is going to be this year's IMF?
That is a good question.
No,
One year I'll interview him about all of this in one of your webinars, but I don't know if he's going to be there this year.
Yeah, because then it'll be our three lovely Davids participating in our lovely talk today. So, guys, please see our lovely Davids at IMS conference, and if you're ready to up your artist career, talent buying, or of course label A&R, do so with the help of data. Viberate is now offering a 7-day free trial of their music analytics, which means you can get access to that same stats we just saw.
Exactly.
Thank you, David. Thank you, guys. Viberate will be back soon with another episode of its educational segments, so be there. Take care.
See you soon. Bye.